Joining us now is Wendy Cutler, Vice President at the Asia Society Policy Institute. She's a former acting deputy at the U.S. Trade Representative's Office and worked on negotiations, including on the TPP deal and high-level China talks. And Wendy, it's great to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you.
So let's start right there, because we did see these deadlines for these reciprocal tariffs, at least in terms of the companies for which these letters have gone out, extended to August 1st. How much can get done here in 3 weeks? And I ask you that question knowing that you have worked on deals in the past, and they tend to be timely, and they tend to be nuanced, and they tend to be very difficult to get to.
Exactly. And I think it's very telling that while the administration had promised 90 deals in 90 days, they only have 2 to show for it thus far. They are making progress with certain countries, including India, but that deal hasn't crossed the finish line. And it's all because of these details that need to be ironed out, and more time is needed. I think over the next 3 weeks, we may see a handful of more deals concluded. But I also worry that a lot of countries will not be able to get over the finish line, and therefore they'll have to swallow that tariff rate that was assigned to them in the letters that they are receiving from President Trump.
How to game out the tariff landscape, because not all tariffs are created equal. Obviously, reciprocal tariffs and all these trade deals that we're talking about every day. But then you also have these sectoral tariffs, which seem to be very sticky and perhaps not going anywhere, whether it's cars or now copper, the possibility of semiconductors and pharma. How to think about those and the intention there as the U.S. tries to stand up domestic supply chains versus getting to trade talks with some of these other deals?
Right. So the administration in these current negotiations is trying to limit the scope to just the reciprocal tariffs. So if you reach a deal with the U.S., we'll bring our reciprocal tariff down, but that does not shield you from tariffs that may be coming on critical minerals or on aerospace or on semiconductors or on pharmaceuticals. But many countries have not accepted that, including Japan, which wanted to get an exception from the 25% sectoral tariff on autos. So in short, these sectoral tariffs are going to complicate and make even more difficult negotiations that are already encountering a lot of problems.
Wendy, what should investors make of the fact that South Korea seemed to say it really wasn't clear to us exactly what the U.S. wants in this situation? And when these so-called reciprocal tariffs were first announced in early April, a lot of people were scratching their heads about where exactly did these numbers come from? And it looks like trade deficits. Some of the countries, especially the ones today announced, just really don't have the capacity to buy as much stuff from the U.S. as they sell to us.
Well, you're exactly right. And Korea's not alone. I hear this from so many of our trading partners, that they're not really clear on what the U.S. wants. They make proposals, and Washington comes back and says, do more, make more concessions. And so they feel that it's kind of a, there's no end to this. And frankly, they have domestic constituents in their own domestic politics. And so moving in certain areas where the U.S. is pushing for market access, for example, whether we're talking about dairy in India or beef on Korea, these are very sensitive issues for these countries. And so, again, there's just a lot of confusion and lack of prioritization. And I think the administration is negotiating with so many different countries simultaneously that it's not doing the type of thorough job that really needs to be done to bring these deals over the finish line.
So what's the most likely scenario if the deals don't happen by August 1st? If there's no flood of dozens of countries coming across the finish line, is the expectation that the tariff levels are just going to rise so high that they're going to be forced into compliance, or maybe just that they find different trading partners and the whole world has to live with that?
Well, exactly. These countries are not standing still now. Many are trying to diversify and lessen their dependence on the U.S. market. So it's no coincidence that we're seeing an uptick in free trade agreement activity among our partners and other types of arrangements where they trade more and they integrate their economies further. And in the long term, that hurts the United States, because we're on the outside. We don't get those benefits. And so while we think we have a lot of leverage with these tariffs and that everyone really wants the U.S. market to continue access to the U.S. market and they'll do anything to continue that access, I think countries have their red lines and their limits. And I think the U.S. is beginning to see some of those red lines in the negotiations. I would just say this may lead the administration to become more flexible over the coming 3-week period, particularly if we see more economic fallouts in the U.S. from these tariff hikes.
Okay.